Let's get this show started.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody, as we continue our first ever Paganish Michigan Virtual Book Fest. Coming up next, we have Lillith ThreeFeathers, who has written a book called The Heart of the Elder, about elders in our community. Lillith, take it away.
Hi there. I'm glad to be here. I want to show you the cover of the book because we think it's a great cover, showing that elders come in all shapes and sizes, but that their heart is what is important. So I guess I want to talk about why we wrote this book. We got this nudging to write this book years ago, and I have to tell you, this book was 5 years in research and writing, so this was definitely a work of love from us, the authors, me and my co-author Joy Marie Wedmatic. And we talked every day for 5 years about this book. Set aside a little bit of time every day to discuss things, and we interviewed a lot of people, and we sent out questionnaires. We really wanted to tap into this topic. We wanted to increase understanding of pagan values and offer comparisons between the different branches of paganism. That was what we started out, and we wanted to honor our own elders and look at the elders in the community and how important they were to the community. So when we began interviews, many of the people that we talked to said there is no pagan culture. Now, in 2020, that might be a shock to people to hear that, but 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that apparently was a belief that there was no pagan culture. So that was one of the first things that we felt we had to deal with, was look at the concept of what our pagan culture is and go from there, expand on into what is an elder within that culture. Okay, so, and we were told there's no cohesive belief system, therefore there can't be a pagan culture, so we can't have pagan elders. And I was surprised to hear this from people who should know better within the pagan community. So anyway, I will say firmly, we reject that. We believe there is a very firm basis of pagan culture, and it is the diversity of paganism that makes that culture vibrant and evolving. And so we defined pagan very inclusively, and we wrote about pagan culture, and we focused on different aspects of pagan culture. And then we summarized some of the elders from the past who helped create the modern movement. And so, like I said, we interviewed a lot of people. We ended up using bits of interviews from 30 different people in the book. And we felt that it was important to look at what pagan elders do in our community and how that could help our country and our world. So I guess I could read our definition of paganism if you'd like me to do that. Okay. For purposes of this book, the term pagan will be used to identify the countless groups that accept pagan or neo-pagan as their identity, as well as those who prefer other historical or explicit labels. Just as the label Christianity includes countless forms of worship and numerous belief systems, so too does paganism. However, paganism is broader than a simple umbrella designation. Certainly, it includes many people who follow comparable beliefs, for instance, participants of various Wiccan groups, or those who follow an animistic belief system. or those who believe in pantheism or polytheism. However, to limit the pagan community to those with identical or similar beliefs is to ignore a large portion of people who find welcome, support, and friendship there. Many of the people within this community do not call themselves pagans or neo-pagans. Individuals may use many other titles, and a few reject designations altogether. So our definition of pagan incorporates the variety and range of polytheistic religious groups, those who practice pantheistic, dualistic, or non-monotheistic religions, as well as followers of religions based on ancient, indigenous, folk, or ethnic traditions. I won't go on with it, but I just wanted to give people an idea of where we began with this. Okay, so we had a lot of things we wanted to include in the book, and the interesting thing was we had come up with a list of topics we wanted to talk about in the book, and then when we interviewed people, a lot of them came up with similar topics. And so that was a wonderful, fun discovery that other people had some of the same things that we did. So let me see. I'll look at this table of contents and tell you some of the chapters. So after we define paganism, we talk about pagan culture, and we listed a summary, if you will, of some of the people from the past, the historic people, some of whom are still living, many of whom are not, who helped the modern version of paganism develop and brought us to where we are now. So obviously we couldn't include everybody, but we included people that we felt we had to include. There were quite a few that we felt we had to include. Okay, so then we talked about what is an elder, what makes somebody an elder, and the different cultural roles of the elders. We talked about the difference between teachers, leaders, and elders, and the similarities between all of those. We have a chapter on becoming an elder, which was really fun because a lot of the people who shared their stories in that chapter talked about some of them trained to become an elder, and some of them it kind of snuck up on them and took them by surprise. We talked about recognizing elders in the greater community, and the cultural roles of elders. The cultural roles of elders is really one that I found very fascinating because within paganism, whatever type you're talking about, we tend to focus on the elders that are obvious, the ones that are leading a ritual, and the ones who are out there doing the work every day. And so those are the ones that get noticed, but often in people's lives, in individual people's lives, what we find are totally unknown people that become very beloved elders and very important elders to even a small group of people or one or two individuals. I admit I forget where I was with the table of contents because I got off topic. Okay, we talked.
Okay.
So we talked about how to establish a respectful relationship and some of the different ways that that needs to be handled or should be handled, how people met their elders, how elders teach the different relationships between becoming a student and not being a student, how elders test and how students test their elders. I'm using the term student because that's the easiest one to use. And we offer advice for both students and for elders. And then we have some really fascinating chapters. We have chapter How Elders Change the World, and one called Amazing Events. And if we have time, I'll share a little bit from those chapters. We also included rituals and ceremonies in the book. We have 3 different eldering ceremonies to acknowledge elders, and a death rite for when an elder passes. One of the rites of passage can be adjusted easily for use with any gender, any set of pronouns. So we wanted to incorporate ceremonies that could be used by anybody, could be easily adjusted by anybody or any group to suit their purposes. Okay. We also talk about what happens when you part ways with an elder. We talk about what to do if you run into a bad elder, something that we would like to think never happens, but how to tell, maybe if you've got an inkling something might be wrong. We offer a little advice there. And then of course we talk about when elders pass and what happens when that happens. And I think it's pretty obvious in the pagan communities that when elders pass, that's really not the end. That a lot of times there is an interaction with elders even after their passing, where they can become an important, still be an important part of the community. Okay, so I guess that's the table of contents. There are a few other chapters in here I didn't mention, but we also talked about obviously our elders and our stories, Joy and my stories with our elders. We have a lot of stuff we put in the book, and then some wonderful people who others would consider elders have put things in the book. So I think it's a really nice, I'm really amazed. I mean, like I said, we worked hard on this book, and when I pick it up, I go, oh yeah, oh, I remember that. That is in the book, okay? All right, so we don't have any questions yet. So should I just read from the book?
No questions yet, so yeah, pick one of your favorite parts and share.
Okay, well, I wanted to share a story that Joy wrote about one of our elders. William Molnar was his name, and he was called the Great Wizard Bill by those of us who knew him. And if you had known him, you would totally understand why he was called that, because he could be wonderfully dramatic. And he was what I would call an old-fashioned wizard. You know, he had kind of an interesting interaction with both the pagan community and the non-pagan community, and he fit into both places. He worked as a reader, used a crystal ball in the non-pagan community, and as a counselor there, and obviously did a lot of different things in the pagan community. So I wanted to share this story, which is from the chapter Amazing Events. Okay. Okay. This is Joy's story, so the my and the I is Joy. My teacher, Mr. William Molnar, called me one day and told me he was having a problem in his apartment. He had a large carpet that wouldn't stay still on the floor. Bill said he would leave for work, and when he returned, the carpet would be in a different place. It would move towards the couch. Each day was getting worse. The day he called me, the carpet had actually started moving up the front of the couch. At that point, I said, "I think you're kidding me." Sorry. I could just hear her say that. He said, "All right, we'll put the carpet back and you can see for yourself." Bill picked me up at my house and drove me to his apartment. The carpet was slightly wavy looking and one side did appear to be moving up the front of his couch. We placed the carpet back in the center of the room and left for about 2 hours. When we returned, the carpet was no longer flat on the floor, and it had moved about a foot closer to the couch. So we sat down to watch. Soon the carpet began to move towards us. It would rise up in one area and then slide forward. At this point, two friends came to visit with a child. The child began running around the room, but stopped dead at the edge of the carpet, staring at it like he was on a cliff. The family, slightly bemused, left, and we went back to our vigil. I said, "It looks like something is under there, moving the carpet." It really looked like there was something crawling underneath the carpet. As it moved, the carpet moved. I asked Bill, "Do you see that shape moving under the carpet?" This quickly changed to, "There is someone under there." It looked like a person was struggling to stand up. We freaked out. Bill frantically suggested we throw it out the window, but it was too big and we didn't know where the non-corporeal person was going to go. Finally, it occurred to me to just roll up the carpet, and Bill happily agreed. After we rolled it up, the carpet stopped moving. However, Bill no longer wanted the carpet, so he called a friend who had always admired it and asked if he wanted it. "Could you come get it now?" The friend and his buddy arrived to get the carpet. Bill and the two men carried the carpet down the stairs, out of the building, and across the complex to the new apartment. It was a long walk, and I was curious about what would happen, so I tagged along. As they carried it, the new owner of the carpet said, "This carpet is really heavy. What you got in here, a dead body?" With a perfectly innocent face, Bill replied, "Why would you ask me something like that?" The carpet was installed in the new apartment, and it never moved again, ever. Bill was one of these people who liked to teach by putting you into a situation and seeing what you did with it. And I think this is a good example of that. It's also a good example of his practical solutions in a situation. Obviously, there was some way that he was affecting this carpet and the person was coming from somewhere and attached to the carpet. But once the carpet was no longer with him, it behaved like a carpet forever and ever after that. So. Any comments, questions?
Talk a little bit about what makes an elder.
Sure. Okay. You know, that was probably the most fun part of doing this, was coming up with what makes an elder, because, you know, people start out with, well, they're older. And then it's like, but that's not enough, because we all know a lot of people who are older, and just because they're older doesn't mean that they have that indefinable quality that is elder. So let me see if I can find something to read from the book that would help with this. So we came up with things that are important. And depending on culture, you know, it's really interesting. One of the things we found, depending on culture and on tradition, you have people becoming elders at different ages. So one of our respondents was from Guatemala, and she was talking about how in Guatemala you become an elder at age 52. I'm not sure why they picked that age, but that's the age. And yet in Africa, when Joy studied in Africa, she was told that, okay, I'll read it. In describing the beliefs of the Dogara people of Africa, Joy explained, they say a person has to be solid before they become an elder. To them, becoming solid requires initiation, training, and the experience of a lifetime. Now, obviously in the US, we have this cut off at age 65 where people are kind of expected to retire. And so we have this belief at that point that somehow they're not doing important work or something. They're sitting around, they're golfing or whatever. Of course, that's not the truth in our culture. I mean, how many of us really know people at 65 who retire and stay at home and live on their pensions and Social Security or whatever, you know? I mean, if that were true, we wouldn't have all the 70-year-old Walmart greeters. And I think most of us would probably figure that those Walmart greeters, it didn't really fit the idea of an elder. Okay, so we went on, and what we found was, you know, there's a lot of issues around what is an elder, and especially when you're talking about older women, but this is also true of older men, and this is becoming a global problem. And this is one of the things, oh, I'm diverting again. I'm sorry from your question, but let me finish my thought. This is one of the things that we believe that paganism and pagan people can share with the rest of the world and can help with the healing of our world. Okay, because we realize that our elders have a lot of wisdom, they have a lot of tradition, they have a lot of information that and experience. And so that became one of the other key elements of what makes an elder. It isn't just age, it's like they've done something, they've learned something, they have accumulated experience and wisdom. And one of our respondents linked that into astrology and talked about the second Saturn return being an issue that would lead them to become an elder. And I would say that probably a good use of the second Saturn return could help one establish the experience needed to be an elder. Okay. And so again, life experience is one of the things, but it also has to do with lifestyle and character. So what we ran into was people had trouble defining what that was, but we tried to pinpoint things like the ability to respond appropriately in situations. Because an elder knows, and this could be something as simple as what you do if you have too many peaches, to what you do if somebody is neglecting a child. It could be anything. It could be something simple. It could be, you know, something major. But it's the role of the elders to help things work out well in a positive way in a community. And I think this is a thing where it's not an easy place, because the elder stands between letting the person learn by experience and stopping bad things from happening, and then leading those people in a way that is better for them, in a way that is good for them. Okay, so maybe that gives you a little perspective on some of the things we were looking at. We found that there were a lot of different types of elders depending upon what you were talking about and what parts of the pagan community you were talking about, as well as the society in a whole, our society in a whole. We have within the Native Americans, there's this concept that says for the next 7 generations, for the 7 generations. And when they're talking about that, that's really tapping into that whole spiritual greater ability of the elder, because the elder sees more, or hopefully sees more than just what's going on right at this moment, but sees how that fits into the flow of time and the flow of experience. So the elder helps us understand the continuity and the cycles that go into what's going on. Okay, Bill has asked. So what I am hearing here is an elder is a situational. I think the elder is more than situational, but it's easier to explain what an elder does from the situational viewpoint. When we're talking about an elder's energy, it gets a little bit more difficult to put that into words, but that is also it. An elder can bring a sense of energy to a situation. Maybe just by sitting there and listening, the elder brings a calming feeling, a feeling of connection to the divine in the case of a spiritual elder. But I mean, daily life does come down to a lot of practical things. So then that would fit into a situational view. But I don't want you to think that that's the only thing that we're getting in the elder. There's a wonderful woman who is an elder in her own right, Ailey Shiva, and she's from the Israel. I don't know that most people know that, but anyway, that's where she's from. And we were on a panel once together, and she said a wonderful thing. She said where she is from, everybody knows who the elder is. They know who the elders are. They've been around them, and they're in a small community, and they know who the elders are. But in the US or in the Western world, we don't know who the elders are. And so then she looked at me and she said, so that's why you and Joy had to write the book. So people would know who the elders are. And which is why we have the chapter on the difference between elders and teachers, elders and leaders. You know, there's more to an elder than did they write a book. And yes, elders write books. Yes, elders teach. Yes, they can be leaders. And some of the greatest elders we have right now alive are heads of organizations or heads of groups, and they are leaders. But we have a lot of different situations. Would it help if I go into some of the different cultural roles? Would that help? Am I explaining this to you, Bill, in a way that makes sense?
We do have a little bit of a delay between when you're talking and when people are going to hear you. So, but yeah, go ahead and explain those different roles. I like that.
Okay, all right. So we have a bunch of the different roles that we looked at in the book. A lot of different roles. One was family elders. This is like, you know, very important, I think, to many people who end up in the pagan world, is if they have someone in their family who understands or who at least listens and plays that role of elder within the family, then that helps them out a lot. But we have a lot of pages here on family elders and a lot of wonderful stories. If we have time, I'll share some of those. Then we have community elders, and I think those of you who have gone to different covens or groves, worked with rituals in public or gone to festivals, probably recognize the concept of community elders. And with the many people that we have in our society who come from families that don't accept them or do not understand them, often the community elder becomes very important to pagans. Then we have elected elders and founders. So if I could say, Pete Pathfinder Davis is an elected elder or founder. He would fit that personality, that placement. Starhawk, perhaps. Even Margaret Atwood might fit in that. Okay, we have elders in the arts and occupations. And this is actually plays a big role in paganism, even if you have to stop and think about it a minute. We have a lot of different apprenticeships within paganism, and apprenticeships would be considered an elder in occupation or art. For instance, somebody who wants to become a blacksmith, wants to learn blacksmithing, wants to learn jewelry making. One of our respondents in the book works in the theater, and she talked about how she was taught to become aware of subtle energies while they were working in a play, to try to use those energies to make the theatrical experience a more magical experience. So we have a lot of arts within the pagan community, drum making, jewelry making, clothes, all sorts of things that would fit into this category. Then obviously the most important elder perhaps to the pagans are the spiritual elders. And those are the ones that become our guiding lights, right? One of the people in our book, Tina Frick, wrote, "The elders in my life are touchstones. I believe that it is a huge role that they play in the pagan religion. To learn from what they say, as well as learning from bouncing your ideas off them, I feel is a huge part of the role they play in our culture." So we come to the sharing of the knowledge that happens there. Okay, then we have keepers of shrines and temples. Those are people that can be elders that maybe you have very limited contact with, but they do something that's very important for our culture, even if it is keeping a sacred grove, allowing us a place to go and have our festivals, a place to do our rituals. There are some that are really obvious. You know, the Sekhmet Temple in Nevada is a pretty obvious one that would fit into this category. Okay. And so one of the major things is that, you know, for continuity of culture, elders play a role in that. A culture doesn't last very long unless it has some sort of continuity. Did that help explain it?
I think so.
I'm trying to, you know, it's a pretty intense book, if I do say so myself. I can't believe we wrote it some days. How am I doing on time? Oh, I have time. Good.
Yep, we got about 11 minutes left before our next author starts.
Okay. Okay. So as I said, we have rites of passage, and one of the amazing things I think about this book is the part that goes into the rites of passage and honoring elders and initiation of elders. recognition of them within a community, because Joy has spent a lot of time, both of us have spent 40 years probably within the pagan community, but she has spent a lot of time doing rites of passages, studying them. And so one of the things you get in this book is the benefit of her wisdom in that area. And that's why we included the ceremonies. So we have the different parts of a rite of passage or an eldering ceremony, a croning. We explain all the different pieces that should go into it if you want to make your own rituals. And then we offer 3 different rituals. One is a ritual that I have modified from the church that I founded, that is used in that church. And it's an eldering ceremony that can be adapted. Now, it is based on a more Native American or indigenous ceremony, but it can easily be modified for other traditions just by replacing a few key phrases throughout it. And it can be, you can remove the binary gender references if you want, pretty easily. So that was we thought that was important to put in here. We also have a croning ritual, an eldering ceremony for a woman that we were given the honor of using, written by a wonderful woman, Lady Vala Runesinger. And we also have a saging ritual for men, which is there's a lot going into this ritual too, and I have used this one. This is one of mine too. So hopefully these will be helpful to you. Then we also have a what you might call a memorial service, or a death rite. We have an appendix where we show who contributed to the book and what paths they follow. And let's see. I'm sorry, I forgot what I was supposed to be doing again. I apologize. I'm what?
I said you're sharing from your book. It's all.
Oh, well, I'm doing that, so I guess. Oh my, that's embarrassing. It was an older moment. Do I have time to read something?
Oh yeah, we've still got 7 minutes left.
Okay, all right. So, okay, this is one of my stories in the book about one of my elders. Stern people directed us down a wide path. It led through the woods and down a gentle slope towards an unusual structure that peeked out from behind the hill. The building looked like no other I had ever seen. It rose out of the hill, emerging from the land in the same way the trees grew around it. At the end of the path, a wide entrance led into the dome structure. There was no door to shut out the elemental aspects of nature, just a space outlined by wooden beams. As I walked through the opening, I noticed wide wooden beams continued to delineate the architecture. They radiated out from the center of the ceiling in widening spokes that bent downwards until they reached the ground. As I walked underneath the dome, my feet made a slight crunching sound. Sunlight shone through the opening and reflected on countless rocks and crystals embedded into the ceiling and walls. In the relative dimness of the interior, chairs were arranged in semicircular rows outward from the entrance. No one seemed to be in charge. Nobody offered directions. Carefully, I walked across the gritty floor to pick out a chair. Around me, people noisily talked to each other. As I looked curiously at the unusual structure, I tried to settle comfortably into the vibrant energy of the chamber. Suddenly, something changed. Automatically, I looked towards the doorway, trying to figure out what had happened. A quiet man caught my eyes. He sat near the opening in a space demarcated by sunshine. Without movement, he existed, just as the rocks did, in a space of patience. Immobile, he was the epitome of the phrase, all the time in the world. He wore a bandana covering his graying hair and pulled low onto his forehead. Recognition dawned. This was Beautiful Painted Arrow, the elder. Without fanfare, he had arrived. No one had announced him, and no one had seen him enter. Although he was recognized as an elder by multiple indigenous nations, he sat quietly waiting for the students to notice. Very slowly, people became aware of him. When it was time to begin, more individuals noticed. Gradually, the room grew quieter until eventually we sat in silence. Still, he waited longer, 1 minute, 2, and 3, slowing down time for all of us. Only then, he shifted slightly, settling his back into the chair. A moment more passed before he began to speak in a soft musical voice. Without haste, he talked. Soon it was obvious that he was an educated and knowledgeable man. He interspersed his native language with explanations in Spanish and English, and his quiet words wove a spell. As I leaned forward to catch his words, I realized that the elder had taken us out of our normal world. We had entered a special place. Now we existed in an extraordinary time without clocks. In fact, we sat in a space where the movement of the sun and the shifting of breezes measured the day. Moments were established by the cadence of words, moving in and out with our own breaths. The elder had created a condition where we could be present, conscious of our actions in the current instant, and in the ones that followed, without awareness of what we did. We were immersed in the now, surrounded by rocks, guided by his quiet voice. Thus he taught us the power of silence and stillness and humbleness. Okay. So,
Powerful imagery there.
Thank you. It was a powerful experience. I don't think I had ever been around an elder before who wasn't announced, wasn't introduced, you know, nobody said, here he is. And just by the power of him being present, he manifested. And then he created a space in the time that we were in that was impressive. It was really impressive. Okay, do we have any more questions?
I am not seeing any at the moment.
Okay, good. All right. So I guess one of the things I want to say with this book is I want to read this part. This is also part of why we wrote the book. People all over the US have a dawning recognition that things are not quite right, and their discomfort creates a realization that we need each other in ways that we might not prefer. Pagan culture could very well show the larger majority how individuals can appreciate each other so that we can work together to create a beneficial future. With this book, we are not proposing a return to the old way of doing things, whatever that truly means, but a return to an old wisdom, the realization that the bonds that hold us together are necessary for society. Those bonds are not based on laws, but on relationships. In fact, the ties themselves will help us to develop holistically and harmoniously. And that's what's going to create the new future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Lillith. I look forward to reading the whole thing.
If I can put in a little blurb, if you read the book, if you've read the book and you like it, please put something on Amazon so that people know you liked the book. It's always good to have a review, or let your friends know if you liked it. I think that I would like to think that there are a lot of words of wisdom in the book that aren't just mine and Joy's, but are other people who shared with the book. So, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing a link to that book on the Facebook page and on the website. And yeah, we get to go see our next author is Jason Minke. I posted a link over in the comments, so come on over and join us. Thanks again, Lillith.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Bye-bye.